featuring the industry's top leaders. This is The Executive Edge with Joe McClung.
Good afternoon, Floodgate family. I'm absolutely excited to have this episode of Executive Edge. And for this one, we're focusing on, with PH Partners, we have Ben Perkins, who's the managing director, who is going to give us some great insight into, the financial world, the financial pedestal of the MedTech community. So, Ben, you and I have had a chance to get connected, to get to know each other, but a lot of people here don't know you. They don't know PH Partners. So give us a second. Tell us a little bit about yourself and, of course, the great stuff you guys are doing at PH Partners.
Great. Well, Joe, I'm excited to be here as well. So thank you for the time. And thank you for the audience. I'm a 25-year investment banker, always in healthcare and life sciences. Managed Merrill Lynch's practice on the West Coast for a number of years. Launched and ran an investment banking practice for Ernst & Young of Manhattan. Most of my career has been spent working with the Medtronics, LabCorps, Pfizer's of the world. Started PH Partners in 2018 to leverage those relationships we have with boards and executive rooms at the majors to the benefit of our smaller clients. So what we do today is we spend a lot of time with emerging companies, helping them secure financing, helping them engage in strategic conversations with the majors, and then fight on their behalf to get the best deal possible. So I'm excited to talk to your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great perspective on being on both sides and understanding, helping that emerging, really and connecting those dots to the strategics. It makes total sense. This has been an interesting couple of years, for funding, since let's say the least. So tell us a little bit about what you see as the landscape right now. How are you reading that?
Yeah, so listen, there's a lot of capital in the environment looking for opportunities. I think if you look at 2024, you had $18 billion roughly in capital coming into the MedTech environment. That was a number, though, that was skewed really towards your late-stage companies. So there were a significant number of companies that raised $100+ million. I would say that's a rarity, but it really speaks to the fact that the investors that are pursuing the sector today are looking for late-stage opportunities with significant revenues that have proven out the technology, and they're looking really for more growth opportunities. It is a little bit of a barbell effect, though, because at the very early seed stage, startup Series A, there is significant interest as well. And so when you talk about those kinds of opportunities, those are investors that are looking for, hey, how can I deploy capital near term that will reach a value inflection point in the next 18 to 24 months that can really see my capital grow to a 4 or 5 or more times return. So we have a lot of interest at either side of the barbell, if you will. And in the middle, what we're seeing is people have deployed capital in the late teens, early 2000s, and we're seeing kind of a right sizing and a Darwinian effect of people kind of vetting out the winners and the losers.
Yeah. There was that capital in the 20s, 21, et cetera, that was deployed. And some of those, they're having to take down rounds because it was highly valued. And so you're getting that, as you called it, the barbell, right, effect, getting kind of Darwinian approach. But it's good to hear there's a lot of interest in that seed and A. I've seen a lot on that de-risked, ready for exit, proven commercial, and now someone just need to put gas on the flame to get the acceleration. But that's really interesting on the seed and A. I hadn't heard that as much.
We're seeing it. I think the other interesting part of this environment that we're in right now is we're seeing a lot of the family office, high net worth individual that is saying, I don't want to go through venture capital anymore. I feel like I've earned my stripes. I've taken some lumps with the venture capitalists, riding that out over the last few years, and I want to try it on my own. So we're seeing some of the high net worth private capital folks saying, show me early stage deals where I can get in, I can use my expertise to help drive an outcome.
Yeah, that's great. And it makes sense for family office because a lot of those, have some business acumen, connections, et cetera, that they can leverage to help ensure their investment success, right? So directly versus through a VC.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm curious, there's been an interesting time, in the last few years. Is there anything that you think is really systemic in that makes MedTech fundraising unique?
So again, like thinking about it from both ends of the market, the later stage companies, folks want to see that the revenue growth rate is exceeding 30%, that the gross margins are exceeding 60%. I mean, ideally, you're at something that's higher than that, but certainly 60% is an entry point that they can get comfortable with. And then they really want to know how and why those products are being adopted. Obviously, you have a great read into the sales marketplace and how professionals are selling. I think as the majors step in and say, I like this asset, I like where it's headed, the marketplace it's in, the next question becomes, talk to me about how you are selling into that marketplace. Do you have position ownership? Are there rebate programs? What is happening that is driving this? That a larger company that is more sensitive to regulation is going to look at very closely. On the early companies, it's really, is this an obvious path to market? Can I deploy capital in a large market that's a viable solution that has reasonable capital requirements? You know, some of these companies, like when you look at some of the BCI, brain computer interface companies, a lot of excitement, but you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars required to get that asset to profitability. And that's probably 5-7 years away.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what I hear you saying is really on that commercialized side of the market, that later stage company, you got to have the fundamentals of growth, profitability, but also making sure you're getting that growth and profitability in a way that's replicatable within an organization that has more regulatory, you know, you're meeting the regulatory standards that's common within MedTech, right? You can't, and then on the smaller size companies is that they have that ability to get to the end zone, but it's within reach, it isn't so far out that you're requiring that 7-year investment and hundreds of millions of dollars.
Exactly. Something achievable, something easy to wrap your head around. You don't have to shoot the moon.
Yeah. Interesting. So tell me a little bit deeper of, you mentioned having the connections and understanding the strategics and Medtronics, et cetera, as starting PH partners. But give me a little bit more color on what the value that you guys uniquely bring to this MedTech marketplace.
Sure. So, your traditional investment banker is going to get involved, and they're going to say, do you want to sell your business? Do you want to raise capital? We're going to come in and look at your business and say, if we owned your business, here's what we would do as an owner. The difference between us and most investment banks is our lead partners own our business. So we don't need to do a transaction where we're going to force you to sell, or try to force you to sell, or try to force you to raise capital. We're going to look at it and say, we are going to spend serious time and energy on all of our clients. We want to work with that client to say, how do you maximize the outcome on this specific asset over time? And it may be, hey, the market's moving away from you. There's new technology coming. You've got a limited window where you can maximize this product right now. Let's sell. It may be, hey, I think the market's actually heading towards you. Let's raise a little capital. Let's identify a strategic partner that can get you access to a new sales channel, or partner you with a therapeutic company or services company that will allow you to attack a channel in a much more efficient manner. It's really looking at it and saying, okay, we're acting like an owner alongside you. Yeah. If we own this business, what moves would we make to maximize the outcome? And again, it may be, let's hit the table now because there's some real competitive forces heading towards you, or it may be, this is the beginning of a cycle. We've got a long ride here. Let's invest a little capital, bring in the right partner, and ride it up.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, because you're coming alongside, like you said, as an owner, but in the place you sit, you get to see a lot of different aspects of the market, and you're far enough away to have that strategic view to really say, hey, I know you love this product and category, but it's got a short lifespan. We need to do something now, which is hard for an operator, right? That maybe, or founder, developer to admit. So having that contrast, I could imagine, would be good. Is there an example maybe of a company you guys would be willing or able to share that would be meaningful?
Yeah. So actually, having done this for 25 years, I have a close friend and an executive that I've worked with at Lynch Regenerative Medicine over the years, where he and I have partnered on more than 5 deals. probably 6 or 7 at this point, capital raises, IPOs, M&A transactions. And the executives from that company, as they start new companies, we sit down and we talk about, okay, you're going to form this entity. What's the right capital structure to employ? What's the right organizational structure to employ so you're maximizing your asset? In some cases, you're looking at it and you're saying, there's a core technology that requires a proprietary manufacturing structure. However, that manufacturing structure can be deployed across multiple different verticals. Yeah. And so how do you maximize the manufacturing vertical or the manufacturing technology while also maximizing the commercial efforts in very distinct and disparate verticals? So it's really thinking through all of that to make sure you're not leaving any money on the table.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like really being able to look at, wait, we created this to manufacture this product, but wait, now this is a platform that could be its own vertical in either an OEM scenario or other things to be able to maximize that fixed cost you already created, right? Sweat that.
Exactly. And on top of that, Joe, much like you, I mean, when you do this forever, we know executives that are relevant to each of those disciplines. So we can sit down and talk to the owners and say, hey, here's some sales professionals, here's some operational professionals that we've worked with in the past that are great executors. Here's a captive audience you can talk to about starting that business, building that business, and being successful in that world.
Yeah. Finding the right who, not always the how. That's what it's something near and dear to my heart, of course. So question for you, guys, by the way, we'll be able to take some questions at the end. So if you want to post some questions down in the notes below, we'll pull in a couple of the questions at the end if we've got some time. So if you got questions for Ben, please post those below. So, you've dealt with a lot of, emerging companies. What's a couple things, mistakes that you see common when, early stage or emerging companies come forward, in the financing round? What mistakes do you see?
So it's a great question, Joe. And I think the most common mistake I see is an overzealousness and an excitement about your own technology. Super important. But when you're talking to a strategic or you're talking to an investor, you need to be aware of why are they talking to you?
Yeah.
So we always come into the world with our perspective of here's why I matter, here's why I'm great, here's why I'm going to change the world. But in reality, the investor's looking at it, the strategic's looking at it and saying, okay, I get approached by 30 companies a week. I want to hear in 3 minutes what your value prop is, why you think you matter to me. Not why you matter to the world and not why you're going to change a specific cardiovascular or neuromodulation procedure. Why do you matter to me? And so it's looking at each of your potential counterparties and saying, okay, this is a seed investor. They like to have the next investor come in within 12 months. So what confidence can I give them that I'm going to create a valuation inflection point in 12 months that fits their timeline that will induce them to take the next meeting, to get more involved, to get more excited. And if you're talking to a strategic who may be in the cardiovascular space, it's talking to them about, hey, here's how we think we can help you sell more of your existing products. Yeah. Here's how we think we can leverage your existing sales force to be more efficient. Here's how we think we can do these things in combination with you to drive value for everyone. So just don't sell them on what you are, sell them on how you're going to make them.
Yeah, that's classic. Find out what's important to them, tell the story as they would think it, And I think I heard you say early on too is don't be over exuberant. I think I've heard other people talk about those highly inflated TAMs that people go, okay, really? Is that really the, that's the GDP of North America. I don't think we're going to get that. But so I think it's a little of both, right? Is having that humility of what's actually actionable, so that you have credibility, and then telling that story of what it means to them right now, depending on who you're talking to, and adjusting your conversation appropriately.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong, the counterparties want to see you're excited, you're invested, you're going to fight this tooth and nail, but make sure you understand what they want to hear.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. As there's a lot of great companies, a lot of great technologies out there. How do they stand out in a very crowded space, with limited capital? They're all fighting over. What would you say companies need to do to stand out, to be noticed from companies like yourself or strategics or angel investors? What would you say?
It's interesting. You referenced this earlier, and you and I both seen it through our careers. The jockey can matter as much as the horse. So making sure that you've got this strong technology, but who have you surrounded that technology with to be successful? So as a first-time CEO, that's not a death. So that's not a problem, but make sure if you are a first-time CEO, you've taken the time and energy to surround yourself with a KOL base that can validate your technology, that you've taken the time to educate the major strategics in your space about the opportunity, because investors are going to call those strategics and say, hey, you're the leader in this vertical. What do you think about this technology? Because ultimately that investor wants to know that strategic is thinking about acquiring you 3 to 5 years down the road.
Yeah, that's the number one exit. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so make sure you have done the work to surround yourself with KOLs and strategics that will say positive things about you and understand your technology. It's a lot of yeoman's work making sure, hey, this KOL isn't likely to invest. This strategic isn't possibly going to invest at this point in time. But it's important for my overall process that these folks understand what I do so that they can speak highly of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, they understand the thesis, right? So that's good. Guys, put some questions below if you have any other questions for Ben. I've only got a couple more here for him. But what I heard you say, I think was some gold there, is, really get the right team, know your gaps, right? So if you're a first-time CEO, you might need someone on your team that has that pedigree, that's been there, done that could augment your exuberance and concept. Or conversely, if you come from a separate space, how do you have the right KOLs that really understand that therapeutic vertical? So the team is strong, right? So people are betting on the horse, or the jockey more than the horse, I think is the right thing, right?
Yeah.
So you get the right jockeys there and the right team. And then the second thing is really, as you said, doing some of that yeoman's work of making sure everyone knows how you fit in the market. So if they go ask somebody else to validate what you said, that they're going to get collaboration. Yeah, it wasn't interesting, but I can really see how this fits. So that is a gap in this market. They've heard about it before. Because that's only going to give them more confidence and likely to invest. And conversely, conversations that happen that you don't know about, that they're not willing to invest, but they talk to somebody else because it's a small MedTech world. They're like, you know what? I did meet a guy the other day that has a really interesting thesis for this category, this meet an unmet need. Let me introduce you, right? And so that investment comes in and you didn't even know they were around, right?
Exactly. And I think you bring up a good point, because there's so much cross-fertilization amongst the investors. So you may be at a conference and there may be a growth equity investor, but you're an early stage company, and that growth equity has a portfolio of relevant technologies. Spend the time to talk to them, because they know the seed investors. They know the Series A investors. They may say, hey, my buddy at this organization loves this space. And we invest in a lot of his companies. So go talk to him. Maybe he'll take a look at you and it could be interesting.
Yeah, no, exactly. So if you got any other questions, please comment below. Curious, as we're looking forward now, into are there certain categories within MedTech that are interesting, that are, you think, driving the biggest exits or the biggest amount of investments right now that you could identify?
Yeah, so in general, the way we look at that opportunity is, where are the large strategics placing their bets and where are they investing? So there's been a tremendous amount of interest in the cardiovascular, peripheral cardiovascular space, RH Shockwave, what have you. There's been a meaningful interest in the neuro space, whether it's neuromodulation, brain-computer interface opportunities. Those are interesting spaces where the longer vision investors are investing. Mm-hmm. And you and I were speaking earlier, Joe, the tissue regenerative medicine space, I think, continues to garner a lot of interest. The reservation there is it's a little bit of a tweener, if you will, between pharma and MedTech.
Right.
Yeah, MedTech historically is selling off of a mechanical solution, whether it's a joint or something that's a stent or something like that. Whereas when you start getting into the regenerative tissues, it's a biology sale. You're selling
BLA.
So you're selling on those prospects. And so it's a different sales process, it's a different understanding, and it really requires a sales force that has a different level of education. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity. We spend a lot of time and energy there because we love the space. And I think as time goes on, it'll get more and more traction. You'll see more and more investment.
Yeah, no, and the regulatory in that biologics is different, and it's being developed, right? Some of them are still considered under the minimally manipulated. Some are going through full BLA. Some are, so the regulatory pathway is different in that space as well. But I agree with you that that body's own healing is definitely a part of medicine that's only, I think, beginning to be unlocked.
Agreed. And the other area that we're seeing a lot of interest is those technologies that are enabling the movement of procedures from a hospital to the ASC setting. So obviously significant savings from an insurance perspective when you move it out to the hospital setting. So if there are technologies that are enabling that, there's significant interest from the majors around how can we participate in that macroeconomic.
No, I think that's really interesting. So really hearing you say is that really that cardiovascular space. I mean, we've seen those big exits, Shockwave and Silk Road, and Silk Road is more neuro, but still vascular. And Inari, and then emerging. I agree with you on neuro. I think the neuro space and the mapping and the navigation tools that are now available, and the need to not have to do a craniotomy to be able to get things done, kind of opens up that world to where I think cardiology was 15 years ago, right? And figuring 20 years ago, figuring that out. And then the biologics space is interesting as well. So, and I like the fact you bring in the market economics, right? At the end of the day, healthcare is a business, and where you have opportunities, that you're taking it from a high cost of care to a low cost of care, the money's going to follow that because it's a savings, and you're going to get revenue. So, it's a really good way to think about the space.
And on that neuro comment, it's really interesting. So the pharmaceutical companies have spent tens of billions of dollars trying to chase small molecule and biological interventions to affect the neurological diseases. But the reality is we still don't know enough about brain chemistries and targets and interventions to truly be effective from a pharmaceutical intervention standpoint. So I think there's a real opportunity on the device side to make meaningful outcomes for patients based on some of the neuromodulation and other things that are happening. So I really think near term, device has a real play here in therapeutics until the science can catch up, or in neuro until the science can catch up for therapeutics.
Yeah, no, I mean that blood-brain barrier is so difficult for the simple pharmacological. So I'm seeing a lot more combination plays, right? So if there's device for delivery into that neuro space as well, right? Where you're getting those combination plays, that's going to be interesting in this segment, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
So, good. Well, we do have a comment here. Let's pull this in. We got just a little bit left in time. We'll pull this up here in a moment. There we go. So here's a comment. Karen, what are the key components of an effective value prop? You mentioned creating a value prop, and how do they differ from an ineffective one?
Yeah, so when we look at clients to take on, as I mentioned, we look at the management team, we look at the KOLs and the strategics that may or may not be invested, may or may not be around the table. We do look at the market size, and then we look at the competitive landscape. Who else is chasing the target? Target meaning, the disease or what have you. And those are the major things that we're looking at. So if a company can answer that for us and demonstrate that they are an efficient manager of capital, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking for, can you justify a value inflection point with the capital that we may be providing you or some of our investors may be providing you within a 18 to 24 month time point. The areas where I see people struggling are if they go in and they talk about, listen, this is a massive multi-billion-dollar market. There's no one in it. We think we could be interesting here. We're doing some research. The early research looks interesting, but they haven't defined what their actual product is yet. They haven't defined how they're going to get this to market.
Right.
They haven't understood the actual sales process and how the product is sold in the marketplace. That's where I see the most of our clients struggle in the final stages of diligence, is demonstrating to the investor, I understand the complete sales cycle.
Yeah. Who's the ultimate customer, right? I hear that a lot, especially from scientific founders, right? That are excited about solving problems that, yes, you could solve that problem, but is there really a market for it? And as we know in healthcare, just because you're solving a problem doesn't mean there's a market for it, right? You got to find what's that right market for it, and to be able to actually monetize it to return your investment, right? So that makes sense. Good. Well, hey, I've enjoyed the conversation we've had today and all the insights. It's just a wealth of information. If people want to engage PH Partners or learn more or connect with you, what would you recommend? What's the best way for them to find or connect with you guys?
Yeah, I think I actually don't know this, Joe, but I think my email is on the website. If it's not, just reach out to me at Ben@PH Partners, and I'm happy to connect. And even if it's we're not looking to do something right now, but I'm going to pick your brain about how do I interact with a strategic or someone at a specific strategic that we can provide some guidance around. Happy to help. This is it's a village effort to get all these things across the goal line, so we're happy to be a contributor to those village efforts.
I love that aspect, because that truly is. This is a MedTech village, and it's a big but yet small one. And knowing that if you can provide that assist in some way, it usually helps come back. And so it's a great attitude to have, and I'm glad you're one of those people that are available to do that. So, and Ben, it's a testament to that you've spent 27 minutes here chatting with us, sharing to our audience this insight that's so crucial on perpetuating the innovation and, of course, the patient impact that happens in this space. We can't forget that. I mean, that's huge. So thank you for taking the time and sharing. We enjoyed having you on this Executive Edge.
Thank you for having me, Joe. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.